Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
When Denzel Washington walked onto The View to promote his powerful new film, Sacred Ground, he expected the usual banter, maybe a few laughs, and a chance to share why the movie meant so much to him. What he didn't expect was Joy Behar turning the conversation into a heated debate about history, faith, and who gets to tell certain stories. The cameras caught every moment, the tense pauses, the sharp exchanges, and that one sentence from Denzel that made the audience gasp and the internet explode. By the end, Joy looked stunned. The table was split, and Denzel's closing words left everyone, on set and watching at home, questioning where the line is between storytelling and ownership. This wasn't just an interview. It was a cultural flashpoint. The View studio had that familiar early morning buzz. Cameras gliding into position, the warm hum of chatter from the audience, and the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee drifting across the set. The show's iconic table gleamed under the lights, its glossy surface reflecting the anticipation of another headline-worthy broadcast. Denzel Washington, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that matched the quiet confidence he carried everywhere, took his seat between Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny Hostin. He smiled easily, greeting the crew with his trademark warmth, shaking hands and leaning in to ask people how their mornings were going. He wasn't here for controversy. He was here to talk about Sacred Ground, his new historical drama set during a turbulent chapter in American history. A story about reconciliation, faith, and the courage to stand for what's right, even when the world is against you. For Denzel, it wasn't just a film, it was a deeply personal project. Whoopi opened the segment with her signature ease. So, Denzel, this film is, wow, it's layered, it's intense, it's powerful. Tell us why you wanted to tell this story. Denzel nodded, his eyes lighting up with that unmistakable mix of focus and passion. Well, Whoopi, Sacred Ground is about more than just the history. It's about truth. It's about what happens when you stand for something bigger than yourself, even if it costs you everything. I grew up hearing these stories from my parents and grandparents. They stayed with me. This film was my way of honoring them, and hopefully opening some hearts and minds along the way. The audience murmured in approval, several breaking into applause. It was a smooth start, warm, engaging, heartfelt. Even Joy Behar, sitting just a seat away, smiled and leaned in with a curious expression. Now, Behar began in her characteristically direct tone, this is a movie about a chapter of history that's, well, let's just say it's complicated. Some people feel these stories should only be told by those who lived them, or by their direct descendants. Do you ever worry about, overstepping? It was a question wrapped in politeness, but the subtle edge in Joy's tone didn't go unnoticed by Denzel or the audience. He took a moment before answering, his hands folded on the table. I think about respect, Joy, he said slowly. I think about honoring the people whose stories I'm telling. And I think about telling the truth, even if it's hard to hear. That's my responsibility as a storyteller. I don't believe truth belongs to just one group. Truth belongs to everyone willing to seek it. The response drew another round of applause. Joy nodded, though her eyes narrowed slightly, a sign she wasn't done probing. Sunny quickly steered the conversation back to the film's production, the breathtaking locations, the meticulous research, the way Denzel insisted on using historical consultants to ensure accuracy. For a few minutes, the tone lightened again. Laughter sprinkled through the discussion when Denzel recalled how a stubborn horse on set refused to hit its mark during a crucial scene. But the undercurrent was still there. That slight tension in the air, like a faint rumble of thunder on a sunny day. When the cameras cut to commercial, Denzel leaned back in his chair, sipping water and chatting casually with Whoopi. Joy scribbled a note in her cue card, glancing up at him briefly before returning to her writing. She didn't seem angry, just ready. And as the director counted down to return from the break, no one on set knew that the next segment wouldn't just be about sacred ground. It would be about ownership, identity, and who gets the final word on history. A discussion that would spiral far beyond what anyone anticipated. The storm was coming. The polite laughter faded, replaced by the tense quiet of a studio sensing something heavier was about to drop. Joy Behar leaned forward, resting her elbow on the table, eyes narrowing just enough to show she was about to challenge Denzel Washington. "Denzel," she began, her voice smooth but edged, "I understand your passion for sacred ground. It's clear you believe in its message. But let's be real here. Some critics are saying this movie's underlying message is divisive, that it paints certain groups in too favorable a light while casting others as villains. In a country already split down the middle, is that responsible filmmaking?" The air tightened. Even the crew stopped shifting in their seats. Denzel didn't flinch. He clasped his hands on the table and met her gaze with calm intensity. "Joy," he said evenly, "the truth isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it's ugly. Sacred ground isn't about painting anyone as perfect or evil. It's about telling a story that's been ignored for too long. History happened, pain happened, and art has a responsibility to face that head-on, not sweep it under the rug because it might ruffle feathers." Joy gave a half-smile, the kind that said she was ready to poke holes in his reasoning. "But Denzel, people watch movies to escape, to feel good. You've built a career inspiring people. Don't you think showing so much anger, so much confrontation, risks alienating the very audience you want to reach?" He leaned back slightly, but his voice didn't lose its weight. "Escapism is fine for a summer blockbuster, but when I make a movie like Sacred Ground, I'm not chasing ticket sales, I'm chasing truth. If we keep avoiding the tough conversations, we'll never heal. You can't cover up a wound and expect it to heal. You have to clean it out first, even if it hurts." Sonny Hostin jumped in, nodding toward Denzel. "I have to agree here. Sometimes a film can be a mirror, and a mirror doesn't lie." But Joy wasn't letting go. "Sure, but whose truth are we talking about? Because to some people, this looks like you're pushing an agenda, and audiences are getting tired of feeling lectured by Hollywood." The crowd gave a few nervous cuckles, some supportive, some uneasy. Denzel's eyes sharpened. His voice stayed calm, but the steel underneath was unmistakable. Whose truth? The truth of people who lived it. The truth of communities that never got the microphone. I'm not here to play it safe so people can feel cozy in their ignorance. If that's an agenda, then fine. I own it. Whoopi Goldberg shifted in her seat, clearly sensing the stakes rising. "Joy, I think what Denzel is saying is," but Joy cut in again, her tone now a touch sharper. "I'm saying there's a fine line between art and activism, and when that line gets blurred, it can backfire. You risk people tuning out before they hear the message." The tension in the room was a living thing now. Denzel leaned in, lowering his voice just enough that everyone instinctively leaned forward. "If the price of telling the truth is that some people tune out, then so be it. My job isn't to water down a story so it fits neatly into a box. My job is to make sure it's heard, even if that means the room gets uncomfortable." There was a pause. Joy tilted her head, studying him. The audience was silent except for the faint hum of the studio lights. Sarah Haynes finally broke the moment with a cautious smile. "Well, it looks like Sacred Ground is already doing what it set out to do, start conversations." But the look between Joy and Denzel said the conversation was far from over. This wasn't just a difference of opinion, It was a collision course, and neither seemed ready to swerve. The studio air grew heavy, almost electric. The conversation had moved past friendly banter and into the minefield neither seemed willing to step back from. Joy leaned forward in her chair, papers in hand, like weapons she was ready to use. "Denzel, I'm just saying," she began, her voice cutting through the hum of the cameras, "when you release a film called Sacred Ground, you're making a statement about history, about ownership, culture, and the political implications that come with it. You can't just hide behind 'it's only a story.' People are going to take sides." Denzel straightened his posture, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "Joy, I'm not hiding behind anything. Sacred Ground isn't about politics. It's about people. It's about respect. And if you can't tell the difference between the two, maybe you didn't understand the movie in the first place." The audience gave a sharp, collective "ooh," sensing the tension spike. Joy smiled, but it wasn't a warm one. "Well, maybe the problem is you're telling a story about land disputes, indigenous rights, and cultural appropriation, and you expect people not to talk about politics. That's naive at best." Denzel's voice dropped low, calm, but loaded with force. "No, what's naive is assuming every story is an agenda. What's naive is thinking an actor like me, a black man who's seen and lived through his own share of prejudice, would take on a project without knowing the weight of it. I do know. That's why I did it. But I didn't make it to fit into your neat little left versus right talking points. I made it to make people feel something real." The room went silent. You could practically hear the hum of the stage lights. Joy, undeterred, took a sharper tone. "Feel something real or feel something that fits your narrative, Denzel? Let's be honest, this movie's timing is convenient." The audience gasped. Denzel's jaw clenched. His hand tapped lightly on the armrest, a tell he was holding back. "Convenient?" he repeated, his voice rising slightly. "You think I spent 3 years of my life on location working with indigenous communities, sitting with elders, listening to their stories, just for convenience? Joy, that's insulting, not to me, to them." He pointed toward the camera, breaking the invisible fourth wall. "Do you hear this? This is exactly what's wrong with these conversations. People want to turn truth into a headline, into something they can fit between commercials. But real life, the kind I saw out there, the kind these people live every day, doesn't fit into a box you can argue over at a coffee table." Joy tried to interject, but Denzel wasn't done. His voice gained an edge, not yelling but commanding in a way that pulled every eye to him. "You sit here, Joy, and you talk about Sacred Ground like it's some political chess piece. It's not. It's blood. It's memory. It's land people have been buried in for hundreds of years. It's a story they trusted me to tell, and the least you could do is treat it like more than just a sound bite for your show." The crowd erupted into applause, long, loud, and unapologetic. Joy's expression froze in a polite smile, but her eyes betrayed the sting of the moment. She shuffled her papers, buying time, but the damage was done. Denzel had shifted the energy in the room entirely. He leaned back, calmer now, but still locked in. "If that makes you uncomfortable, Joy, good. Art should make people uncomfortable. It should make them talk, not just argue." The host's table was silent except for the faint shuffling of Joy's notes. Even she seemed to know that anything she said next would have to match the weight of what had just happened, and that was no easy feat. The segment wasn't over, but the power dynamic had clearly shifted. Denzel wasn't here to be handled, he was here to stand his ground. And at that moment, it was clear to everyone in the studio, he wasn't moving an inch. The studio air felt dense, almost electric, as the echo of Denzel's last statement hung in the silence. Even the camera operators seemed to have stopped breathing. Joy Behar, visibly rattled but unwilling to back down, straightened in her chair and adjusted her note cards like a shield. "Denzel," she said, her tone clipped, "you're not just promoting a film here, you're preaching a moral position that not everyone in America agrees with. Denzel turned toward her slowly, his gaze unwavering. "Joy, you invited me here to talk about Sacred Ground. That film is about standing up when the world tells you to sit down. If people disagree with that message, maybe they should ask themselves why." Whoopi Goldberg interjected. "Let's all remember," but Joy cut her off. "No, Whoopi, this is important. He's using his platform to push an agenda, and I think our viewers have the right to question that." Denzel's voice dropped, low and resonant. "I am using my platform, Joy, because silence in the face of wrongdoing is complicity. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe that's the point." The audience, sensing the tension about to boil over, started murmuring. One man shouted, "Let him speak!" Another clapped loudly, sparking a wave of applause. Joy's lips tightened. "You know, I've interviewed hundreds of actors over the years. Most of them understand that their job is to entertain, not to lecture." That was it. The moment broke something in the room. Denzel leaned forward, his hands on the table, every word deliberate. "I am telling the truth through stories. And when those stories come from real pain, real history, they're not entertainment. They're a mirror. If you can't look into it, that says more about you than it does about me." The audience erupted. Joy rolled her eyes, but her hands betrayed her, gripping her note cards tightly enough to bend them. Sarah Haynes tried to jump in. "Maybe we can find common ground here?" But Denzel raised a hand gently, silencing her. "No, Sarah, there isn't common ground sometimes. Sometimes the truth divides before it heals." He pushed back his chair, the screech of metal on the studio floor amplifying the moment. The audience went dead quiet. "Joy, I came here with respect. I expected the same. I won't sit here and be told that my convictions are an inconvenience to your show's flow." Without waiting for a reply, Denzel stood, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the edge of the stage. Whoopi called after him, but he kept moving, his steps steady, unhurried. The cameras scrambled to follow him as the audience, in a rare break from studio etiquette, gave him a standing ovation. Joy sat frozen, her face a blend of irritation and embarrassment, clearly aware this moment was about to go viral. As Denzel reached the exit, he turned back just once, looking directly at Joy. "When you stand on sacred ground, you don't move for anyone." He walked off, the doors closed behind him. The studio was silent for a beat, and then the chatter exploded. The audience buzzing, the co-hosts whispering, Joy fumbling for her next words. The control room's voice cracked over the earpiece, telling the hosts to go to commercial now. But it was too late. The clip was already destined for headlines, hashtags, and every corner of the internet.
The headlines that followed the next morning were nothing short of explosive. Denzel Washington shuts down The View. Sacred Ground sparks sacred fury. Joy Behar silenced on live TV by Denzel's truth. Clips of the exchange flooded social media within hours. The moment where Denzel locked eyes with Joy and delivered the line, "Some things are bigger than politics, and if you can't see that, you've already lost your compass," became the most replayed and quoted segment of the week. Support poured in from fans, veterans, religious leaders, and even fellow actors who admired Denzel's composure and courage. "That's why he's a legend," one fan tweeted. "He doesn't just act about integrity, he lives it." But there was pushback, too. Some of Joy's supporters accused Denzel of overreacting or grandstanding. The View's official statement was diplomatic but thinly veiled. "We respect all guests and their viewpoints. Spirited debates are part of our DNA." Yet behind closed doors, insiders whispered that producers hadn't expected Denzel to push back so forcefully, and certainly not with that level of raw conviction. In the days that followed, Denzel gave a short interview outside a Los Angeles theater, his voice steady but his eyes reflective. "I'm not here to win debates. I'm here to tell the truth as I see it. Sacred Ground isn't just a film to me, it's a statement. And if you think protecting culture, honoring sacrifice, and keeping faith is controversial, maybe you need to ask yourself why. For many, that crystallized the entire moment. It wasn't about celebrity egos clashing, it was about the deeper question of whether art could still carry a moral compass, and whether those who created it were willing to defend it. Weeks later, when Sacred Ground premiered, it sold out theaters across the country. Audiences sat in silence during the credits, some wiping away tears, and almost everyone left with the same impression. The man they saw in the film was the same man they saw on that stage, unwavering, principled, unafraid. Joy Behar didn't comment publicly on the clash again, but viewers noticed that in later interviews she approached topics of faith and heritage with a touch more caution. In the end, the clash wasn't just TV drama, it became part of the movie's legacy, and for Denzel Washington, it was another reminder that sometimes the most important role you play is the one where you're simply yourself. If you liked this powerful moment, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, emotional showdowns, and unforgettable TV moments. Drop a comment below. Do you think Denzel was right to draw a line in the sand?